Wish I were in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. Hello, this is the Gospel according to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you. Guys, please indulge me as I do a little bit of self-examination. And no, not the kind that I do by myself at night, like around 2 a.m. No, this is introspective. I'm wondering something about myself, because you guys might know over the years, one thing that I've said consistently is that I feel like black people, who I love so much, my people, are some of the most, or the least in this case, self-aware people in the world. We're some of the least self-aware people in the world, which unfortunately enables us to become like a joke, to everybody else, because we can't see our own hypocrisy. We can't see our own inconsistencies and how we come across, and, the way that we contradict each other in our beliefs and things. Like we say that Black Lives Matter, but we show each other some of the most aggressive, most self-destructive behavior ever. You know what I mean? But we want everyone else to believe that Black Lives Matter. We tell everybody else, don't call me the N-word, yet we somehow have convinced ourselves that calling each other that is endearing, despite mounting evidence that when we shoot each other, when we hurt each other, what do? We stand over each other and say, yeah, what now, nigga? What now? I just killed you. I just whooped your ass, nigga. You know what I mean? But somehow we tell the world that, it's a term of endearment. It's different when we say it. It's the nigga, not the nick with a hard R. You know what I mean? So, because of that, I want to start with the man in the mirror. I want to take a look at myself, right? And I want to ask myself, because when I try to talk to black people, right, as I'm doing now, I try to talk to family, inevitably, I will run the risk of somebody coming into the comment section, right, and either greatly implying or flat out saying, "You're a coon! You're a coon!" You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Now, the easy thing would be to be like, I know I'm not and everything, but I want to take this moment in time, this specific moment, to look at myself, to take a hard look at myself and say to myself, Mark with a C, am I a coon? Could it be? Now, before I go any further, I'd like to look at a couple of definitions of coon. Let's look at the historical definition of a coon. And I'm going to read this on the Jim Crow Museum's website. Now, they're talking about the coon caricature, right? Now, let me just take a moment. This ain't going to be too long. The coon caricature is one of the most insulting of all anti-black caricatures. It's anti-black, guys. The name itself, an abbreviation of raccoon, is dehumanizing. As with Sambo, the coon was portrayed as a lazy, easily frightened, chronically idle, inarticulate buffoon. The coon differed from the Sambo in subtle but important ways. Sambo was depicted as a perpetual child, not capable of living as an independent adult. The coon acted childish, but he was an adult, albeit a good-for-little adult. The Sambo was portrayed as a loyal and contented servant. Indeed, Sambo was offered as a defense for slavery and segregation. I mean, how bad could these institutions have been, asked the racialists, if black people were contented, even happy being servants? Now, the coon, although he often worked as a servant, was not happy with his status. Now, that could be because I go to work every day and I'm like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I'm not exactly happy with my status, but that's a lot of people, regardless of race or gender. I don't know if that makes all of us coons, but according to this, he was simply too lazy or too cynical to attempt to change his lowly position. Like how many of us stay in our lowly position for our whole career, you know what I mean? So anyway, by the 1900s, Sambo was identified with older, docile black people who accepted Jim Crow laws and etiquette, whereas coons were increasingly identified with young, urban black people who disrespected white people. Young, urban black people who disrespected white people. Okay, that's not obviously the modern definition of coon. Let's get into some of the more modern definitions of coon, all right? Now, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, a coon is an extremely offensive word for a black person, an extremely offensive word. Now, that, of course, historically speaking, that was a slur, all right? When I was coming up, when I heard somebody say coon, a coon, it was usually somebody like, I don't know, some racist dude, who's trying to say something other than the N-word, you know what I mean? So they would call the person, hey, you fucking coon, you know what I mean? But as usual, black people have this tendency to always find a terrible thing to call one another, you know what I mean? So we take the worst fucking words to describe one another and we adopt that. So now, of course, today, the definition of a coon is a black person who puts white people on a pedestal. This means informing on a black person to white people or being excessively nice to white people. Don't, remember guys, that takeaway, 2 takeaways there. Don't be excessively nice to white people. When they sneeze, don't say God bless you. When you're going into a store and a white person is walking behind you, don't open up the door. Somebody might identify you as a coon. You cannot be too nice or excessively nice to white people. The second thing here is that someone who puts white people on a pedestal. Let me ask you guys something. How many of you have a picture of white Jesus on the wall? How many of you have a cross on some jewelry, on a necklace or something like that? Putting white people on a pedestal, worshiping white people, exalting white people. How many do that? When you look at the hip hop industry, how many people have worshipped the mafia? You know what I mean? I'm Gambino. You know what I'm saying? I'm Gotti. I'm this, I'm that. You know what I mean? I guess they're coons too. But this is where we are because this is what black people do. And I just want to point out, speaking of the rapper thing, when I was growing up, one of the things that I noticed, right, is that when it came to the subject of coons, Uncle Tom's even more so, when I was growing up, it seemed like people said, like, people like Clarence Thomas was an Uncle Tom, right? People like Ben Carson was an Uncle Tom. Most of the time, it's a black man who's an Uncle Tom. Not until recently when you have, like, say, Candace Owens, right? Do you get, like, a black female coon. And it made me used to think, right? I'm like, Clarence Thomas, Ben Carson, a host of others, they get called Uncle Toms, or coons. But it was undeniable to me that these people seemed like they were the most learned people. They were the most influential, and that's the dangerous part of it. Like, we shun those of us who actually accomplish some shit, If you have somehow achieved success, right, and you did that, and you speak a certain way, and you believe a certain way, then you run the risk of being called a coon. Just like in grade school, when you start getting good grades as a black kid, you're a nerd. You're subject to be bullied if you speak a certain way. Why you speaking white? You speak like a white man or a white boy or a white girl. You know what I mean? And they will shun you. But you know who never gets called a coon? Ever! As far as I know, your neighborhood drug dealer, your neighborhood gangster, somebody, a rapper, unless he's talking about so-called white talking points, right? But, I was always fascinated by that. How come in the black community we shun those of us who are the most influential in ways that they can be a diplomat? In other words, they can speak to white people with some type of clarity and effectiveness. We shun that. We don't like that. We don't like to see black people talking to so-called white people that these other black people don't like. You will be called a coon, right? So that's something that has always informed me, when I was growing up. And I don't usually talk about this, but on my job, I was very, very involved with my local union, So I would be a union representative, and I would represent everybody, black, white, Asian, Indian, everybody. And I also was a EEO representative, EEO representative, equal, employment opportunity. That's something that you are there for. If anyone on the job feels that they've been singled out or unfairly disciplined or terminated due to their race or gender, or sexual preference. And over the course of my years, I represented black people. I represented white people also because they get discriminated against as well. I guess that makes me a coon for saying that, but it's true, right? And I was very effective at it, might I add. But it was also my experience that when I took that position as a representative in my local union, that I had some of my black coworkers who I love very much, and they would say to me, oh, they only want you because you're black. You're a token. It's like that's the only reason why, they would bring you in. There was very little support, but I put myself in a position where I was actually able to save some, say it with me, black jobs. You know what I'm saying? I've saved some white jobs. It was never an issue. When Trump says black jobs, your Democratic handlers tell you should take offense to that. The funny thing about it is that you never know, or you pretend that you don't know what a black job is until your black job is in jeopardy, until you don't have one. And I saved many a job for a black person. So when I heard that, I understood completely what the dude was talking about. But once again, that can get me considered to be a coon. So I have to ask myself at this point, when people call me that, right? Could I be that coon? Well, drawing from my experience also, as a union representative, one of the things that I learned, right, and one of the things also, by the way, that I greatly admired about the character of Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation, stay with me here, is that he was a great diplomat. He practiced the art of diplomacy, like he elevated it to an art form, you know what I mean? Now, my hero, James T. Kirk, was not the best diplomat. He was a cowboy, he wore his heart on his sleeve, and he hated who he hated, he despised who he despised. I like that about him. But Picard, he was the kind of guy who might be disgusted by you, he might resent you, but he will learn you, he will learn your culture, he will shake hands with you, even though he might hate you, and he will say, welcome aboard the Enterprise. You know what I mean? Even though he knows that he's not a friend to you, and that's one of the things that I took with me when I became a union representative. I had to sit across the table from people that I did not like, and I knew probably didn't like me. And some of them probably didn't like me because of my skin color. But do you allow that to be what stops you from doing the things that you need to do, your little fifis? There are people in this world, this whole world, who will not like you. I made the video. Nobody has to love you. Nobody has to like you. Once again, I'm being consistent here, and you can't let that stop you in your pursuit of the things that you want. You might have a teacher who doesn't like you, or maybe doesn't like black people. I don't know. But as long as that teacher can be professional and be fair, it shouldn't stop you. Oh, I don't like the way he talked to me. I don't like the way he looked at me. I don't like the blah, 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 blah. I'm going to drop out. I'm going to quit because they don't like me. When did we become, quite frankly, such pussies? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you have to be a diplomat. Sometimes you have to be able to see what somebody can do for you. That's the reason why you might see me lending a sympathetic ear to Donald Trump, for example. All right. Once again, this seems to be the qualifier these days that will get you labeled a coon very, very quickly. There are certain people you're just not supposed to listen to, no matter what they could be able to do for you, no matter what they could be able to provide, perhaps, no matter how you might be able to use them. The problem is that a lot of us as black people are coming from a place of weakness, a place of victimhood. So we're always begging for shit. We're the only people who will walk around telling everybody, once again, that Black Lives Matter. How pathetic is that? You get the respect that you earn, number one, okay? So you have to start at home first. And that's always been my stance, all right? So it's not a matter of me trying to elevate or play to or dance for, tap dance for white people. I'm saying that you fucking have to look at home first. That's the part that we always seem to be missing. You look at home first. You fix home first. You be critical before you're critical. I'm critical of myself before anybody else. I'll be damned if I get on this microphone and go after some other creator or somebody else harder than I go against myself. That doesn't mean you might not hear me be critical of somebody else, but I have to look inward first, which is the reason why I'm making this video. Okay? That's the part that we're missing. That's the part that will get you called a coon really quickly. When you talk about accountability, self-accountability, usually, yeah, that'll do it for you. But guess what? That's what'll make you stronger. You know, that's what's going to free you. Being able to look inward, to empower yourself first. And that's how you get the respect of others. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yes, it's okay to question somebody else's so-called black credibility, you know, in this election cycle. You know, when Kamala Harris says that she's black, okay, once again, I'm being very consistent in this because you guys have me on video over the years saying that I do not primarily address myself or identify myself solely as black. I am human. All right. I am having a black experience. Obviously, there's no denying that. I'm very proud of who I come from. I'm very proud of where I come from. I'm proud of who I am. I would never want to be anything different than what I am, ever. But to be solely identified as black or primarily identified as black in 2024 is extremely problematic because it means so many different things to so many different people. It is not always good. I believe that the damage is irreparable. But the good news is that we're still human beings and we're deserving of human rights. We're deserving of human dignity. And that's where I'm coming from. That's what I fight for. So when I ask myself, when all of these people call me a coon, am I? Am I? Now, I know, you know, the tendency, right? I know the temptation is to just jump in the comment section and just say, yes, Mark. Yes, Mark with a C. You fucking are. You're the biggest coon ever. Okay. You know, I am whatever you say I am. But the good news for me is that I am strong in my mind. I'm strong in my spirit. I haven't always been that way. I've done videos talking about that when I was a kid. But I had to go through that fire to be where I am today. And where I am today is quite confident that the way to live is as a free-thinking, conscientious, proud, compassionate, thoughtful human being. And that's where I am today. So you take that as you will. And going forward, you reference this video in the time when Mark with a C said to you, you feel how you want to feel about it. I'm just going to keep on rocking on. This is the Gospel According to Mark with a C. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for everyone who donates to the channel through the super thanks on every one of my videos. I will catch you on the next one. Rock on.